Hey everybody, how is it going today? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I want to talk about the copper sector. A lot of these stocks are setting up not only for very nice short-term trades, but also long-term holds as well. So I want to get into their charts and show you the ones that I think are setting up the best, and then I'm going to get into some of your questions. Now, before I get started, as always, everybody, please remember I am not a financial advisor. All of this is just my opinion and for entertainment purposes only. Please make all of your own trading decisions. All right, well, before I get into the charts, I just want to touch base on this article right here, because this article talks about how copper is going to play a vital role in our renewable energy expansion that we are going to see going into the next couple decades or so. I think a lot of people out there, when they think about the metals that are going to be used in the renewable energy sector, copper is probably not one that comes to mind. But if we scroll down here, it talks about lithium, and then it says, that's going to come from an explosive surge in demand and production of electric vehicles of all types in the coming years. And hand in hand with the rising demand for lithium will be the rising demand for, I think that's supposed to be all metals. It says AL metals, but I think it says demand for all metals, especially copper. This is copper is hot once more because renewables are now mainstream and will remain there for decades to come thanks to wind farms, solar panels, and especially electric vehicles. And if we scroll down to how much they project these metals to grow, it says based on S&P Global projections for the rollout of solar, wind, and EVs to 2025, so not very long into the future. It says, together with the analysis of metal intensities in these use cases, S&P Global Market Intelligence forecasts demand to grow by a combined annual growth rate of 15% for copper, 35% for lithium, 28% for cobalt, and 35% for nickel. So even though those other metals, which get most of the attention, are projected to grow faster than copper, I think this is one part of the copper demand side that a lot of people aren't taking into account. And of course, copper is used for many other things as well. So I think there is a very nice tailwind as far as renewable energy for the copper sector. But I just wanted to point that out real quick, but let's get into those charts. All right, well, first I want to start with the daily chart of the IX 1090, and this is all the copper stocks in my TC2000 trading platform. And you can see ever since the bottom of the COVID crash in March of 2020, these stocks have been doing very well, just like a lot of other stocks out there, especially some commodity stocks, because a lot of people are anticipating that inflation is going to continue to remain high. But if we zoom in a little bit, we can see copper's kind of been going sideways since right around February or so. So it's been in a nice little accumulation base, and it's starting to come out the right side of this rounded bottom. Actually, over the last 6 months, it's kind of been in a downtrend, but it looks like it is trying to break the downtrend right now, and it has broken above the 200 period simple moving average. It's forming a very nice tight consolidation, and I think if it breaks above this level right here, I'm probably going to have to own some copper stocks. I'm thinking of getting in them today, actually, because they are just looking so strong. But just looking at the overall sector of the copper stocks, they look really good. And let's go to the first one I want to show you, and this one is Southern Copper Corporation, and this one has pulled back from this double top formation. It made just over $80 a share earlier in the year, made a nice little double bottom formation, and is blasting above all of those moving averages. The only one that remains is that 200, which of course it had a hard time getting above that in the summertime. But judging the way this consolidation is shaping up, I think this thing just has like more explosion to the upside written all over it. Of course, I will wait for the breakout before I jump in on it. But man, just the way this thing is starting to wind up, I would expect it to be blasting above that 200 period simple moving average anytime now. And going to that 15-minute chart, you can see that it's starting to make a nice little triangle consolidation, and these are usually continuation formations. You don't want to jump into the, you don't want to jump the gun on these, I should say. You want to wait for them to break through that pattern, because these things could also resolve to the downside. So you always want to wait for them to break out of that consolidation. But by the looks of this one, I would say this is probably going to break out to the upside. And Southern Copper, I believe, pays the highest dividend of the stocks that I'm going to show you. I think they're right around 5.5%. Don't quote me on that, but it's got to be pretty close to that. But that is definitely a nice little bonus if you want to ride the potential wave up in the copper sector. SCCO is very nice. Next one is Freeport-McMoRan. You can see Freeport-McMoRan's come around a nice the right side of a rounded bottom formation as well. This one is actually above all those moving averages I have on my chart and is winding up as well. I mean, this one looks beautiful. This thing looks like it could be a candidate to be buying options in for the rest of the week, because if we get an explosion through this resistance area, those options could pay off very nicely. Freeport-McMoRan pays a dividend as well, but I almost think it's only like around 0.5%. So it's adorable. It's only 0.5%, but it is an added bonus. Let's go to the next one, which is TRQ. And TRQ had a breakdown earlier, or I should say last week, I believe. And yeah, it was last Friday. It had this big breakdown, big gap down, but it has been getting bought up ever since. I mean, this thing gapped all the way down to $12, and right from the word go, it was just getting bought up that entire day. And that buying pressure has continued, so people are taking advantage of this gap down in TRQ. This one is probably the weakest of all the ones that I'm going to show you, but it's still pretty strong compared or considering that huge gap down. It's just been getting bought up ever since. I don't believe that TRQ pays a dividend. Last one I want to show you is HBM. HBM is one that I've been watching closely this week, and you can see this one has broken above all the moving averages, forming a nice rounded bottom, double bottom formation as well, and this thing is above all of those moving averages and winding up in a tight formation as well. And if you go to the 15-minute chart, you can see this one looks like it is ready to potentially be breaking out to the upside from this triangle consolidation pennant, whatever you want to call it. Either way, it's a continuation pattern that usually resolves to the upside, but never enter these until they break out, because you never know which way these are going to resolve, especially when they are extended like this. Even though it's beautiful and looks like it's going to resolve to the upside, when they're extended, you know, there's always that possibility of a pullback, and that you know, doesn't wreck the chart at all. But if you're buying based on this potential breakout, you know, you'll be in for a rude awakening if it breaks down to the downside for the next few days or so. But HBM, I believe they pay a dividend as well, and I think that is like an adorable, you know, 0.2%, you know, less than 1/4%. But that is just a bonus as far as I am concerned, because I think the copper stocks are setting up to be going on a run from here. And of course, you know, with the inflation tailwinds and the fact that there's supposed to be higher demand for copper in the future, I think that bodes well for this sector as a whole. And some of these stocks are just, the chart patterns are looking absolutely beautiful. I mean, they've been in pretty much year-long consolidations, and the longer the consolidation, usually the bigger the breakout. But that is my view on these copper stocks. All right, well, I'm going to get into a question right now. And this is the first question I've gotten into in quite a while. I haven't been able to put as much time into the channel as I would like to, because I got some other stuff kind of going on right now, and it's just about over, so I should be able to focus on the channel a little bit more. And plus, I've been getting so many spam comments, you know, about cryptocurrencies and hacking into people's Instagrams, you know, all that nonsense. It's been really hard to find the real questions in comments, or at least it's been a lot harder anyway. But if you have asked any questions or had any comments and I missed them, I apologize. Ask questions again, and I'll try to get to them. And I really appreciate you guys that take the time to ask questions and leave comments. You know, I don't have really a whole lot of like-minded people around here, so you guys are all I've got as far as like-minded investors and traders. So I really appreciate the interaction, and I enjoy it. So please don't stop asking the questions, and don't hesitate, because I enjoy going through them. But anyway, let's get into this company. This is Aquestive Therapeutics, ticker symbol AQST. This was asked by Angel, and I'm just doing a brief overview of the company. I really haven't had a chance to look into them, and we'll take a look and see if they are worth a closer look. But looking at these brief numbers right here, you can see, looking at the chart, we are in a little bit of a consolidation over the last several months. So, of course, that is a good thing. That's the first thing that I like to see as far as the chart goes. And looking at the market cap, it's only a $158 million company. So a very small market cap. So it doesn't take a whole lot of buying power to get this thing going. So that, of course, is a bonus, especially if you like smaller cap companies. But let's scroll down. Let's take a look at the company profile. I'm not going to read all of this because this is a pharmaceutical, and I guarantee you there's going to be a bunch of words in here that I cannot pronounce, and I'm not just going to sit here and sound them out and waste your guys' time. But just looking at the company profile, it says they are a pharmaceutical company that focuses on identifying, developing, and commercializing various products to address unmet medical needs in the United States and internationally. So that is, of course, interesting to know. I'll let you guys go on Seeking Alpha and read about all the products they have available. But let's look at some of the numbers. And looking at their revenue, you can see the revenue kind of topped out in 2018 and had been trending down, but it looks like it is starting to turn back up. It looks like it's going to go from 48 million up to 70 million as far as revenue goes from this year to next year. So that is a very good sign. And scrolling down to the earnings per share, you can see basically the same thing. It has been operating at a large loss, but is going to continue to get smaller as we get into next year and the year beyond, most likely. And if we look at their earnings estimates, so on the earnings per share basis, you can see they lost $1.69, or are projected to lose $1.69 this year, shrinks to a loss of $1.26 next year, and they are projected to get earnings per share positive by 2023. So that is a good sign. And if we take a look at their sales, you can see their sales go from 48 million to 70 million, and then they double to 141 million. So just by looking at that alone should merit a second look into this company. Looks like they have some explosive growth ahead of them, and definitely I will be taking a closer look at this stock. But let's scroll down a little bit further and take a look at some other numbers on the company, and then I'll get into the chart and we'll see how the chart looks. But looking at their market cap, of course, I said it was 158 million. I like to see how much cash and debt they have on hand. Their cash is slightly lower than their debt. I like to see them normally with more cash than debt, but these numbers are pretty close. So they have 34 million in cash and 42 million in debt. And of course, when you take the difference between those numbers and add it to the market cap, you get the enterprise value, which is 166 million. So looking at the cash and the debt, I'd like to see it a little bit better than that, but that's not a deal breaker by any means. Those numbers aren't terrible at all. And let's take a look at their ownership, and you can see institutions own 40% of this. So that is a rather high number as far as I'm concerned. If you're looking at a stock that is below $10 a share, a lot of institutions will not own a stock if it is below $10 a share. So if this one gets above $10 a share, that's going to open up to another group of institutions that could potentially take an ownership stake in this company. Looking at the individuals and insiders, they are just under 6%, which is respectable. I usually like to see right around 10%, but usually when you see some of these companies where the insiders own less than 2%, that's not very compelling at all. So this one right around 6% is definitely respectable. And then the public owns the other 53%. And when I'm looking at ownership and the public owns, 80 to 90% of it, that's not a very compelling argument for me at all. So this little distribution that they have right here with 40% institutions, 5% insiders, and the rest to the public, that's some pretty decent numbers, judging by how, or at least going by how low of a price this company is trading at. So those are definitely some halfway decent numbers. Let's get into their chart now. All right, well, I'm going to get into their daily chart first. Now, normally a company that has numbers like that, where they have the potential to double sales for the next couple of years in a row, I'll be looking at it more from a long-term perspective. but I am not beyond trading any stock in the short term if it's making a very nice pattern. And actually, this one on a daily chart looks very nice. It's making a nice rounded bottom. You can see those nice green volume spikes, which is just more evidence that this thing is under accumulation. It did have this big red one right here, but definitely a lot more large green volume spikes in AQST than red ones. So that tells me this one is definitely under accumulation, and just by looking at the pattern, that certainly confirms it. As a stock starts to make a rounded bottom formation, that is telling you that supply is drying up. So the buyers are starting to get control of the stock because there's not as much supply out there as there is demand. But we can see that AQST is challenging that 200 period simple moving average today. It has challenged it twice over the last few weeks or so and has failed. But usually 3 times is a charm, so I wouldn't be a bit surprised if Aquestive Therapeutics gets above it in the next couple of days or so. We can see it did push above it, but it immediately sold off, and it's basically right at it right now as I'm recording this video, and it's on above average volume, so you can see this thing has definitely been under accumulation. Now, if this thing can get above all of these moving averages on the daily chart, I think that is going to be what it needs to actually get in a sustainable uptrend. Honestly, looking at those numbers that I saw as far as their sales and revenue, man, I'd really like this thing to go sideways for another several months or so. This thing has been going sideways in a rather tight range probably since May or so, and it was a pretty loose range before that. But let's take a look at the 15-minute chart, and then we'll get into the weekly chart. But backing this thing out, you can see it definitely made a nice rounded bottom over the last couple of days, and now we're getting into that markup period, and it's actually into that acceleration phase right now. So the fact that this acceleration phase ran right into that 200 period simple moving average tells me that it has probably a higher probability of taking a breather in the short term. This thing, of course, anything could happen. This thing could turn right around and explode through that 200 period simple moving average. But just for the fact that this thing is starting to get a little bit long in the tooth on the 15-minute chart, and it's running into that big stiff resistance area and pulling back on it, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if this thing takes a breather in the short term, but definitely a healthy looking chart on the 15-minute chart as well. Let's go to the weekly chart. And we can see this one has only been publicly traded since mid-2018, so there's not a ton of information we can get from the weekly chart, but we can certainly see that it's been in quite a range for the last couple of years or so. This is a pretty sloppy base, but it's a base nonetheless. I'd like to see it be tight like this one right here, and if this base was this tight going all the way back to 2019, I know that's hard to do with the COVID collapse that we had. There was so much volatility for several months there. But if this thing was in a little bit of a tighter base, I would be extremely interested in this one from a chart perspective, because this thing definitely looks like it's under accumulation. Like I said, it is pretty sloppy, but if it can stay in this tight consolidation on the weekly chart for another 3, 4, 5, 6 months or so, I think this thing is going to look very compelling on a breakout, just because it's been under accumulation, and it's been in a consolidation range since 2019 or so. But with sales projected to grow as much as they are, and being that it's consolidating between let's call it, I don't know, right around 3.25 all the way up to right around 5. I think that is a very nice looking long-term chart. So I'm definitely going to keep this one on my watch list. And Angel, thank you so much for leaving that comment. This one was definitely worth the look, and I'm going to put this one on the watch list.
All right, guys, well, that's all I have for this video, so I'm going to end it right there. But if you have any questions about any of these stocks, or if you have any other stocks you want me to take a look at, please leave them down there in the comment section. I will get to them as soon as I can. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching my video all the way to the end, guys, and until next time, take care.